The salvage ship, Morning Star, drifted through the twisted metal remains of what had once been a magnificent alien vessel. Captain Park Hyun pressed his face against the viewport, scanning the debris field with practiced eyes. After 15 years of deep space salvaging, he could spot valuable tech from kilometers away. But today, something different caught his attention. "Kim Tae, are you seeing this?" Hyun called to his engineer, pointing at a gleaming object spinning slowly among the wreckage. It looked like a ceremonial platter made of some kind of crystalline metal that seemed to glow with its own inner light. Kim Tae floated over to the viewport, his magnetic boots clicking against the deck. "Looks expensive," he said with a grin. "Probably worth more than our ship." Hyun activated the ship's external cameras for a closer look. The object was about 2 meters across and incredibly ornate, covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and move in the starlight. But as the camera zoomed in, Hyun's excitement turned to confusion, then shock. "That's not a platter," he whispered. Through the transparent top, he could see the pale form of a humanoid figure lying inside. "It's some kind of pod, and there's someone in there." Kim Tae squinted at the screen. "Is it alive?" Hyun's fingers flew over the scanner controls. Faint. Energy readings flickered across his display. Barely. Whatever systems are keeping it alive are failing fast. He could see warning lights blinking red along the pod's edges. "Captain, we should leave it alone," Kim Tae said, his voice suddenly serious. "We don't know what kind of diseases alien species might carry. Or what if it's some kind of trap?" Hyun stared at the figure in the pod. It appeared to be female, young, with delicate features and an almost human appearance, despite the pale blue tint to her skin. Her chest barely rose and fell with shallow breathing. "Look at her, Tae. She's dying." "She's not our problem," Kim Tae insisted. "We're salvage operators, not rescue workers. Besides, the company has strict rules about bringing unknown biological materials aboard." But Hyun was already moving toward the cargo bay. "Prep the recovery arm. I'm bringing her in." "Captain, this is a mistake," Kim Tae called after him. But he was already following Hyun toward the controls. The recovery operation took 20 minutes of careful maneuvering. The pod was heavier than it looked, and the ship's mechanical arm groaned under the weight as they pulled it into the cargo bay. Up close, the craftsmanship was even more impressive. The pod seemed to be grown rather than built, with organic curves that flowed like water frozen in time. Hyun ran his scanner over the surface, trying to understand the alien technology. The readings were unlike anything in his database. "The life support systems are failing," he reported. "She's got maybe an hour before everything shuts down." "We don't have medical equipment for aliens," Kim Tae pointed out. "Our first aid kit wasn't designed for blue-skinned humanoids." Hyun was already connecting diagnostic cables to the pod's base. "Then we improvise. Look, her basic physiology seems similar to ours. She breathes oxygen, her heart pumps blood. We can work with that." As if responding to his words, the pod's surface became more transparent, revealing the alien girl in greater detail. She wore simple white clothing and appeared to be in her early 20s by human standards. Her breathing was becoming more labored. "She's beautiful," Kim Tae said softly, his objections forgotten. "And she's dying," Hyun replied, his hands working frantically to jury-rig a connection between their ship's life support and the failing pod systems. "Help me save her." The alien girl's eyes snapped open like a startled animal. For a moment, she lay perfectly still in the makeshift medical bed that Hyun had prepared in the ship's small infirmary. Then she saw the 2 humans standing nearby, and pure terror flooded her features. She scrambled backward against the wall, pressing herself into the corner with surprising speed, despite her weakened state. Strange sounds escaped her throat, a mixture of words and what sounded like whimpers. Her large silver eyes darted between Hyun and the ship's medic, Lee Sol, as if expecting them to pounce at any moment. "Easy, easy," Hyun said softly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "We're not going to hurt you." But the alien girl didn't understand his words. She pulled her knees to her chest, making herself as small as possible. Her pale blue skin had taken on an even more frightening pallor, and she was trembling uncontrollably. Lee Sol, who had been quietly checking the girl's vital signs on her scanner, slowly approached with her hands visible. "Her heart rate is through The roof, she whispered to Hyun. She's absolutely terrified. The alien girl's eyes fixed on Lee Sol's medical scanner, and she let out what could only be described as a sob. She began speaking rapidly in her own language, the words tumbling out between gasps for air. Though they couldn't understand the language, the tone was clear. She was pleading. "I think she's begging us not to hurt her," Lee Sol said quietly. She set her scanner aside and backed away slowly. "Look at how she's reacting to our equipment. She thinks we're going to experiment on her." Hyun felt his heart break a little. He sat down on the floor several feet away from the bed, making himself less threatening. "What did your people tell you about humans?" he asked gently, knowing. She couldn't understand, but hoping his tone would calm her. The alien girl watched him carefully. When he didn't move closer, her breathing began to slow slightly. She spoke again, this time pointing to herself and saying what sounded like Nira several times. "Nira," Hyun repeated, pointing to her. "Is that your name?" Her eyes widened in surprise. She nodded hesitantly, then pointed to him with a questioning look. "Hyun," he said, touching his chest. "I'm Hyun." He then gestured to his companion. "Lee Sol." "Hyun," Nira repeated carefully, her voice soft and musical despite her fear. "Lee Sol." The word sounded strange with her accent, but she was trying. Lee Sol smiled and nodded encouragingly. She moved slowly to a storage cabinet and pulled out a water bottle and some basic food rations. Nira watched every movement with intense focus, ready to flee if needed. "Water," Lee Sol said, holding up the bottle and miming drinking. She took a small sip herself, then offered it to Nira. Nira stared at the bottle for a long moment. Her throat worked as if she was incredibly thirsty, but she seemed afraid to accept anything from them. Finally, desperation won over fear. She reached out with a shaking hand and took the bottle. The first sip was tentative, but when nothing bad happened, she drank more eagerly. It was clear she had been dehydrated for some time. "Food," Hyun said, unwrapping a nutrition bar and taking a bite to show it was safe. He set it down within her reach and backed away. Nira looked between the food and the humans several times. Slowly, very slowly, she reached for the bar. As she ate, some of the terror began to leave her eyes, replaced by confusion and something that might have been hope. "She's starting to trust us," Lee Sol observed quietly. Nira finished eating and looked directly at Hyun. She spoke softly in her own language, then touched her chest and said, "Thank you," in heavily accented but recognizable English. It was a beginning. Over the next few days, Nira grew stronger and braver around the human crew. She would sit in the ship's common area, watching them work and eat together with curious eyes. Her fear was slowly being replaced by fascination, especially when she saw how gently they treated each other. Choi Bin, the ship's communications officer, had been working around the clock on something special. He sat across from Nira with a tablet in his hands, his eyes red from lack of sleep but excited about his project. "Okay, Nira, try this," he said, showing her the screen. Simple pictures appeared, a cup, a person, food, with both human and what he hoped were Velani words beneath them. Nira's eyes lit up when she saw the symbols. She touched the screen and spoke rapidly in her own language, nodding enthusiastically. For the first time since her rescue, she looked truly happy. "It's working," Choi Bin called to the others. "She recognizes the writing system I found in our database from other alien encounters." Dr. Yoon Hana, who had taken over Nira's medical care, approached with her daily health scanner. Unlike those first terrifying moments, Nira now held out her arm willingly for the checkup. The doctor had been amazed by what she found. "Her cellular structure is incredible," Yoon Hana explained to Hyun later. "She can absorb energy directly from light sources and convert it to nutrition. Her bones are stronger than steel, but flexible like cartilage. She's built to survive in ways we never could," which made what they learned next even more shocking. Through the translation program, Nira began to tell her story in broken sentences that made the crew's blood run cold. She drew pictures when words failed her, showing them images that painted a horrible picture of her life before. "My people, Velani," she said slowly, using the tablet to help translate. "They say I'm different. Wrong. Wrong how? Hyun asked, gently sitting beside her as she struggled with the words. Neera touched her chest over her heart. I feel, for others, Vellani not supposed to feel. They say it, weakness. The translation program helped fill in the gaps. The Vellani were a rigid society where showing emotion or compassion was seen as a dangerous flaw. Those who couldn't suppress their feelings were considered contaminated. They put me in ceremony thing, Neera continued, tears starting to form in her silver eyes, is called offering vessel for gods of void. Choi Bin looked up from his tablet in horror. Offering vessel? You mean that pod was meant to die, Neera finished quietly. Float in space until nothing left. The room fell silent. Dr. Yoon Hana sat down heavily in a chair, her scanner forgotten in her lap. They were going to let you die in space because you showed compassion. Neera nodded, wiping her eyes. Many others, too. Anyone who cry, who help others, who question leaders. All go to void. That's monstrous, Hyun said, his voice shaking with anger. How can they throw away their own people like garbage? Is tradition, Neera said sadly. Very old tradition. They believe, if weak ones live, all Vellani become weak. Choi Bin was frantically typing on his tablet. According to this database, there have been dozens of these offering vessels found over the years. Other ships, other crews, they all thought they were just ceremonial artifacts. How many? Dr. Yoon Hana asked quietly. Too many, he replied, his face pale, and most were found empty. Neera saw their expressions and reached out to touch Hyun's hand. You saved me, she said simply. First time anyone saved me. Vellani teach that other species evil. But you good. You show kindness I never see before. Hyun squeezed her hand gently. You're safe now, Neera. We won't let anyone hurt you again. But even as he said the words, he wondered if they were true. If the Vellani discovered she had survived, would they come looking for her, and what would happen to his crew if they did? Neera seemed to read his thoughts. They will come, she said quietly. When they learn I live, they will come. Neera had never seen anything like the way humans treated each other. On Vellani ships, everyone had their exact place in the hierarchy, and speaking to someone above your rank without permission meant severe punishment. But here on the Morning Star, she watched in amazement as crew members joked with their captain, shared meals together, and helped each other without being ordered to do so. Why does Kim Tae argue with you? Neera asked Yunwon. Tae as they sat in the ship's small observation deck, watching stars drift by. She had seen the engineer disagree with the captain's decisions several times that week. Yun chuckled. Because he's my friend, and friends tell each other when they think the other person is making a mistake. That's how we stay safe and make good decisions together. Friend? Neera repeated the word carefully. It didn't exist in Vellani language. What is friend? Someone who cares about you, who you choose to spend time with, someone who helps you and trusts you to help them back, Hyun explained. We're not family, and he's not my superior or subordinate. We just choose to care about each other. Neera stared at him in wonder. Choose? Vellani not choose. We obey. We follow rank. We do not question. That sounds lonely, Hyun said gently. Neera nodded slowly. Very lonely. Always alone, even with many people. Over the following weeks, Neera began to understand what friendship meant. She watched Dr. Yoon Hana worry when Choi Bin caught a minor space flu, even though it wasn't her job to care about his comfort. She saw Kim Tae share his favorite coffee rations with Lee Sol when she worked double shifts. Most surprisingly, she noticed how they all seemed to genuinely enjoy each other's company. In return for their kindness and these amazing lessons about human nature, Neera began sharing her own knowledge. She showed them how Vellani technology could convert stellar radiation directly into usable energy, making their ship's power systems incredibly more efficient. Watch, she said, placing her hands on a dead power cell. Her skin began to glow with a soft blue light, and the cell's indicators slowly turned from red to green. Vellani can store star energy, then give to machines. Kim Tae nearly dropped his wrench. You just charged a power cell with your bare hands. Is normal for my people, Neera said with a small smile. But they never use it to help others, only for themselves. She taught them about energy manipulation, how to read stellar, radiation patterns for navigation, and dozens of other technologies that the Vellani had hoarded for centuries. But more importantly, she was learning what it meant to be part of a team, to have people who valued her not for her usefulness, but simply for being herself. The test of these new bonds came sooner than anyone expected. The attack happened during the night shift. Pirate ships dropped out of hyperspace without warning, their weapon systems already charging. The Morning Star was a salvage vessel, built for scavenging, not fighting. 3 ships, military-grade weapons, Lee Sol reported from the sensor station, her voice tight with fear. They're demanding we surrender our cargo and hand over any exotic specimens we might have found. Neera felt ice form in her stomach. They had come for her somehow. Captain, we can't outrun them, Kim Tae called from the engine room, and we definitely can't outfight them. The pirate leader's voice crackled over the communication system. Salvage. Ship, we know you picked up something valuable from that alien wreck. Hand it over and we might let you live. Hyun looked at Neera, who was standing frozen in the corner of the bridge. It's your choice, he said softly. We won't force you to do anything. Choice. That word again. Neera looked around at these humans who had become her friends, who had shown her kindness she never knew existed. They were about to die protecting her, and they were still giving her the choice. No, she said firmly, stepping forward. They want to hurt my friends. I will not let them. Her skin began to glow brighter than anyone had ever seen before. Energy crackled around her hands as she placed them on the ship's main power conduit. The entire vessel hummed with new power as she channeled stellar energy directly into their systems. Shields at maximum, she called out, her voice strange and powerful. Weapons charging. I can give you anything you need. The pirates confident. Demands turned to confusion as the small salvage ship suddenly blazed with enough energy to rival a battleship. For the first time in her life, Neera was using her abilities not because she was ordered to, but because she chose to protect the people she cared about. The humans had taught her about friendship. Now she would show them what a friend would do, to keep them safe. The celebration after defeating the pirates didn't last long. 3 days later, long-range sensors picked up something that made everyone's blood run cold. A massive Vellani warship dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Navigator. Oh-Min stared at his displays in disbelief. Captain, that thing is huge. It's at least 10 times our size and the energy readings are off the charts. Neera went completely pale when she saw the ship's design on the main screen. The vessel was sleek and predatory, covered in the same crystalline patterns as her old stasis pod, but scaled up to terrifying proportions. That is Punishment Fleet Ship, she whispered. They send only for most serious crimes. What kind of crimes? Hyun asked, though he was afraid he already knew the answer. Stealing sacred property, Neera said quietly, or helping criminal escape justice. The communication system crackled to life with a voice speaking perfect, emotionless English. Primitive. Vessel, you are harboring stolen Vellani property. Return the escaped offering immediately and your deaths will be swift. Communications Officer Kang Soo looked to Hyun for instructions. Should I respond, Captain? Open a channel, Hyun ordered. He took a deep breath and activated the transmitter. This is Captain Park Hyun of the salvage vessel, Morning Star. We found a dying person in a damaged pod and gave medical assistance. We're not thieves and we're not giving her back. The response came immediately, filled with cold disdain. I am High Elder Vextar of the Vellani Purification Fleet. You speak of her as if the offering has individual worth. This proves your species' primitive thinking. The creature you harbor was judged unfit for existence by Vellani law. Return our property within 1 hour or face destruction. Kang Soo muted the channel and turned to the others. Captain, I've been trying to research Vellani law through our databases. From what I can find, they literally don't recognize individual rights. To them, Neera is just a thing that belongs to their government. Min was frantically plotting course options on his navigation computer. I can get us into the asteroid field near the third planet, but that ship is faster than us. We've got maybe 30 minutes before they catch up, even with a head start. What about calling for help? Dr. Yoon Hana suggested. Surely someone would respond to a distress call. We're in the middle of nowhere, Min replied grimly. The nearest human patrol is days away, and I doubt anyone else wants to fight the Villani over one refugee. Nira had been silent during this exchange, but now she spoke up. I should go back. They will kill you all for helping me. Absolutely not, Hyun said firmly. You're part of this crew now. We don't abandon our people. But I am not your people, Nira protested. I am Villani. This is my punishment to face. You're wrong, Kim Tae said from the engine room over the intercom. You chose to protect us from those pirates. You chose to share your knowledge with us. You chose to trust us. That makes you human in all the ways that matter. The Villani ship was getting closer, its weapons systems beginning to charge. On the view screen they could see smaller fighter craft launching from its bays, fast, deadly interceptors designed to prevent exactly the kind of escape Min was trying to plan. 36 fighters launching, Lee Sol reported from the sensor station. They're spreading out to surround us. Kang Soo tried one more diplomatic approach. High Elder Vextar, surely we can negotiate some kind of arrangement. What if we— Silence. The Villani commander interrupted. You will not negotiate for stolen property. You will return it, or you will be destroyed as an example to other thieves. Min's hands flew over his controls as he tried to find any possible escape route. The asteroid field is our only chance, but those fighters will catch us before we reach it. Nira watched her human friends working desperately to save her life. These people who had already given her more kindness than she had ever known. They were about to die because they refused to abandon her, and she realized that this was what family meant. Not the cold hierarchy of Villani society, but people who chose to stand together no matter the cost. There is another way, she said quietly, but you will not like it. Hyun looked at her sharply. What do you mean? Villani ships have weakness, Nira explained. They depend on central power core. If someone could get close enough to overload, she touched the energy conduits she had used to power their ship during the pirate battle. I could do it, but ship would be destroyed. You're talking about a suicide mission, Dr. Yoon Hana said in horror. I am talking about saving my friends, Nira replied simply, but Hyun was already shaking his head. We'll find another way. We're not losing you, Nira. That's final. The Villani fighters were almost in weapons range now, and time was running out. The Villani fighters had them completely surrounded. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The Morning Star hung in space like a trapped insect as the massive warship moved closer, its weapons trained on their small vessel. High Elder Vexitar's voice filled the bridge again, cold and final. Your time is over, primitives. Surrender. Our property now, or watch as we demonstrate the price of defying Villani law. What's he talking about? Min asked nervously, checking his sensors for any new threats. The answer came in the form of new contacts appearing on their screens. 3 more Villani ships dropped out of hyperspace, but these weren't warships. They were smaller, faster. Vessels heading away from the main fleet at incredible speed. Kang Soo's face went white as he tracked their destinations. Captain, they're heading for the mining stations in the outer system. There are families there, workers, maybe 300. People total. No, Hyun breathed, understanding immediately what the Villani intended to do. Vextar's voice came through again, dripping with cruel satisfaction. Perhaps you do not understand the consequences of your theft. Allow me to educate you about Villani. Justice. The communication channel filled with screams and desperate pleas for help as the Villani ships reached the first mining station. Through the static, they could hear children crying, people begging for mercy that would never come. Stop! Hyun shouted into the communicator. Those people have nothing to do with this. They are contaminated by association with thieves, Vextar replied calmly as the sounds of destruction continued. Their deaths are on your conscience, primitive. Each moment you delay costs more innocent lives. Dr. Yunhana covered her ears, tears streaming down her face. Make it stop, please make it stop. The second mining station went silent next, then the third. Hundreds of innocent people dead because a small salvage crew had chosen to save one alien girl's life. Surrender our property and the killing stops, Vextar announced. Continue to resist and we will purge every human settlement in this system. Kim Tae's voice came over the intercom from the engine room, shaking with rage and grief. Captain, we can't let them kill more people. Not for one person, not even for Nira. The bridge fell silent except for the sound of Lee Sol quietly sobbing at her station. Everyone looked at Hyun, waiting for him to make the impossible choice. Save one life they cared about or save thousands of strangers. I'll go, Nira said quietly from the corner where she had been standing. I will surrender to them. No, Hyun said immediately. We don't abandon our crew. Your crew is not just me, Nira replied, her voice steady despite the tears in her silver eyes. Your crew is human, your species. Those people dying out there, they are your crew too. Oh Min turned from his navigation station. She's right. Captain, we can't let innocent people die for our decision. They're murdering children, Kang Su shouted, his usual calm completely shattered. How can we live with ourselves if we let this continue? Nira walked over to Hyun and placed her hand on his shoulder. You taught me about choice. Remember, this is my choice. I choose to save those people. If you go back to them, they'll kill you, Dr. Yunhana said through her tears, slowly and horribly to make an example. Maybe, Nira agreed. But I learned something from humans that Vellani never understand. Sometimes you must risk yourself to protect others. You call it courage, you call it doing right thing. Another communication burst came through, a desperate transmission from a cargo hauler full of families trying to escape the system. The Vellani ships were hunting them down like animals. Please, the hauler's captain begged over the radio. We have children aboard. We surrender. Just please don't. The transmission cut to static. Hyun closed his eyes, his hands shaking with rage and helplessness. Every instinct told him to protect Nira, the gentle alien who had become like a sister to his crew. But the sounds of innocent people dying for his choices was tearing him apart. There has to be another way, he whispered. There is no other way, Nira said gently. Unless, she paused, a strange look crossing her face. Unless we make them think there is no other way. Before anyone could ask what she meant, she activated the communication system herself. Hi, Elder Vextar, this is the escaped offering. I will surrender to you, but first I want to speak to my people. I want to tell them why I am choosing to return. Vextar's laugh was cold and mocking. You think you have choices, contaminated. One, very well, make your pathetic speech. It will be your last. But Nira was smiling now, and Hyun recognized that look. It was the same expression she'd worn before single-handedly powering their ship to fight off the pirates. She wasn't surrendering. She was planning something. Nira stood before the communication console, her hands trembling slightly as she prepared to speak. The entire Vellani fleet was listening, but more importantly, she knew her words would be transmitted across all Vellani space through their communication networks. My people, she began, speaking in her native language while the translation software converted her words for the human crew. I am Nira of the Eastern Territories, daughter of research technician Velana and agricultural supervisor Tovek. You were told I died in the ritual of offering, cast into the void to appease the ancient gods. High Elder Vextar's voice cut through angrily. Silence, you will not speak to... But I did not die, Nira continued, raising her voice over his. Protests. I was rescued by beings you call primitive, beings you taught us to fear and hate. These humans found me dying in my offering vessel and chose to save my life, though they gained nothing from it. On the bridge of the Morning Star, Hyun watched in amazement as Nira's voice grew stronger and more confident with each word. This wasn't the terrified girl they had found weeks ago. This was someone who had found her purpose. I have lived among them for many cycles now, Nira continued, and I have learned truths that will shock you. These primitive beings show compassion to strangers. They care for their sick and injured. They make choices based on kindness, not fear. They are everything our leaders told us was weak and contaminated. Dr. Yoon Hana was monitoring the Vellani communication channels. Nira, it's working. I'm picking up responses from all over their space. People are listening. Vextar was screaming now, trying to cut off the transmission, but his own communication protocols prevented him from stopping a formal offering speech. Ancient Vellani law required that the condemned be allowed to speak their final words. But here is the greatest truth I have discovered, Nira said, her voice carrying across the stars to every Vellani world. I'm not the only one who survived the offering ritual. The humans have records of dozens of our people found floating in the void, rescued by other species who showed the compassion our own people lack. The response was immediate and electric. Kang Su was intercepting dozens of communications bursting across Vellani space, people demanding to know about missing, family members asking if their loved ones might still be alive. The offering ritual is not about appeasing gods, Nira continued, her words now ringing with absolute conviction. It is about removing anyone who questions our leaders, anyone who shows mercy, anyone who thinks for themselves instead of blindly obeying. Min was tracking communication spikes across the Vellani network. Captain, there are massive information requests flooding their systems. People are asking about the locations where offering vessels were found, demanding records of who was sent to die. I have seen the list, Nira said, and even through the translation her voice carried deep sadness. Scientists who questioned harmful experiments, artists who created works that inspired hope, parents who showed too much love for their children, medical workers who treated patients regardless of their social rank, all sent to die because they possessed the very qualities that make life worth living. Vextar was no longer trying to stop her. His own crew was murmuring among themselves, and some were openly questioning his orders. The humans taught me a word that does not exist in our language, Nira continued. Freedom. The right to choose your own path, to care for others, to question authority when it is wrong. They taught me that showing compassion is not contamination, it is what makes us truly alive. Lee Sol was crying again, but these were different tears. She's incredible, she whispered. She's changing everything. To my people who hear this message, Nira said, her voice now carrying the authority of absolute truth. You have been lied to. The emotions you hide, the kindness you suppress, the questions you dare not ask, these are not weaknesses. They are your strength. They are what make you Vellani, not the cold obedience our leaders demand. Communication channels across Vellani. Space were exploding with activity. Families were demanding information about lost relatives. Workers were questioning their supervisors. Scientists were sharing suppressed research. The rigid hierarchy that had controlled Vellani society for centuries was beginning to crack. I choose to stay with these humans who saved me, Nira announced, not because I am contaminated or weak, but because I have learned what it means to be truly strong. I have learned to care for others without shame, to make choices based on love instead of fear. Even some of the Vellani fighters surrounding their ship had stopped maintaining their attack positions. Confusion and doubt were spreading through their ranks as they heard words they had never been allowed to speak themselves. High Elder Vextar, Nira said, addressing him directly now. You came here to retrieve stolen property, but you cannot steal what was never owned. I am not your property. I am a living being with my own thoughts, my own feelings, my own right to choose my path. The revolution had begun with a single voice, broadcast from a tiny human salvage ship, but it would spread across the stars, carried by every Vellani who had ever hidden their compassion, every parent who had ever grieved for a child sent to die, every person who had ever wondered if there might be a better way to live. Nira had found her voice, and it would not be silenced. The effect of Nira's broadcast was immediate and explosive. Within hours, communication channels across Vellani space lit up like fireworks as people who had been silent for centuries finally found their voices. On the bridge of the Morning Star, Kang Su monitored the flood of transmissions with growing amazement. Captain, you need to hear this. It's coming from the Vellani homeworld. A new voice crackled through their speakers, young, nervous, but determined. My name is Zephyra, and I am a medical technician on Vellani Prime. 3 cycles ago, my brother Korith was taken for the offering ritual because he gave extra food rations to sick patients. I was told he died with honor, but now I know he might still be alive somewhere among the stars. More voices joined in, each one braver than the last. Parents searching for missing children, workers questioning cruel orders they had followed. Without thinking, scientists admitting they had falsified research to avoid being labeled as dissidents. Dr. Yoon Hana was tracking the communications with tears in her eyes. There are thousands of them now. People are sharing stories they've kept hidden for years. But the revolution wasn't just happening in words. On the view screen, they could see something unprecedented occurring within High Elder Vextar's own fleet. Several of the smaller Vellani ships had broken formation and were drifting away from the main battle group. Min adjusted the sensors to get a better view. 3 ships have completely powered down their weapons. 2 more are requesting permission to speak with us. Inside Vextar's flagship, chaos was spreading through the corridors. Officers who had never questioned an order in their lives were suddenly asking dangerous questions. Why were they hunting down one frightened girl? What gave them the right to murder innocent civilians? How many of their own family members had been sacrificed to maintain the elite's control? "Hi, Elder," came a voice over Vextar's internal communications. It was his own second-in-command, Fleet Captain Mordus. "Sir, we're receiving reports of uprisings on 7 worlds. Production facilities have stopped working. Citizens are demanding access to offering vessel records." Vextar's cold composure was finally cracking. "Crush the rebellions. Execute the ringleaders. Restore order immediately." "Sir," Mordus said hesitantly, "many of our own crew members have family on those worlds. They're asking permission to contact their relatives to make sure they're safe." On the Morning Star, Kim Tae's voice came over the intercom from the engine room. "Captain, I'm picking up internal Vellani communications. It sounds like some of their ships are having crew problems." Indeed they were. On one of the pursuit vessels, a junior officer named Telan had just done something unthinkable. He had refused a direct order. When commanded to target a fleeing civilian transport, he had quietly turned off his weapons console instead. "Officer Telan, explain your actions immediately," his commander had demanded. "Sir," Telan had replied, his voice shaking but determined, "there are children on that transport. I have a daughter. If she were in danger, I would want someone to show her mercy." The words spread through the ship like wildfire. Other crew members began to remember their own families, their own children who could someday be labeled as dissidents for showing too much love or asking too many questions. Back on the human ship, Neera was watching the chaos unfold with a mixture of hope and sadness. "They are learning," she said, quietly to Hyun, "but it will not be easy. Change never is." She was right. Not all Vellani were ready to abandon centuries of tradition. Vextar still commanded the loyalty of his most fanatical followers, and they were becoming increasingly desperate to stop the spreading rebellion. "All ships, maintain formation." Vextar's voice boomed across the fleet communications. "This contamination must be stopped before it spreads further. Any ship that breaks from the fleet will be considered traitor and destroyed." But his threats were losing their power. When 3 ships did break away to join the rebels, the others hesitated to fire on their former comrades. Families served. On those ships, friends and colleagues who had worked together for years. Lee Sol was monitoring multiple communication frequencies now, trying to keep track of the rapidly evolving situation. It's spreading to their military academies now. Young officers are questioning their training, asking why showing compassion is considered a crime. The revolution was becoming unstoppable, but it was also becoming dangerous. The old guard wouldn't give up power easily, and the Vellani were about to face a civil war that would determine the future of their entire civilization. Neera took Hyun's hand as they watched history unfold around them. "Whatever happens next," she said softly, "thank you for teaching me that one voice can change everything." Hyun squeezed her hand gently. "You found that voice yourself, Neera. We just helped you realize it was there all along." The small human salvage ship sat in the middle of a collapsing empire, having sparked a revolution simply by showing kindness to one frightened girl. Sometimes the smallest acts of compassion really could change the entire universe. The Villani Civil War lasted 6 months, but it felt like a lifetime to everyone watching from the Morning Star. Hyun's crew had become accidental witnesses to history, stuck in the middle of a conflict that would reshape an entire civilization. High Elder Vextar made his final stand on the Villani homeworld, barricaded in the ancient council chambers with his most loyal followers. But by then, even his own guards were questioning their orders. The revolution that had started with Nira's broadcast had spread to every corner of Villani space. "The offering vessels are being recalled," Kang Su reported, monitoring the flood of communications. "Ships are being sent to search for survivors at every known location where the pods were found." Dr. Yunhana looked up from her medical station with tears of joy. "They've found 17 survivors so far. 17 people who were supposed to be dead, living with other species who showed them kindness. The end came not with a great battle, but with a simple decision." Fleet Captain Mordus, who had served under Vextar for 20 years, walked into the council chambers and quietly removed his rank insignia. "I cannot follow these orders anymore," he had said. "I have a son. If he showed compassion to a stranger, I would be proud, not ashamed." One by one, Vextar's remaining supporters followed Mordus's example. The old system collapsed, not through violence, but through the simple realization that there had to be a better way to live. The new Villani government's first official act was to formally abolish the offering ritual. Their second was to send an apology to every species that had rescued their people over the centuries. Their third was a request that surprised everyone. "They want Nira to come home," Omin said, reading the official message. "Not as a prisoner, but as an ambassador. They want her to help them learn how to be better." Nira sat quietly in the ship's common area, considering the invitation. These were the same people who had tried to kill her, who had murdered her friends and family for the crime of caring about others. But they were also her people, and they were trying to change. "What do you think?" Hyun asked her gently. "I think," Nira said slowly, "that if I don't help them, who will? They need to learn what you taught me, that compassion is not weakness, that caring for others makes us stronger, not weaker." The transformation was remarkable. Within a year, the Morning Star had been retrofitted as the first joint human-Villani exploration vessel. Kim Tae worked alongside Villani engineers who were eager to learn about human concepts of teamwork and cooperation. Dr. Yunhana collaborated with Villani medical researchers who were discovering that healing could be about more than just physical. Health Lee Sol found herself teaching Villani communications officers about the importance of listening to different viewpoints instead of simply following orders. Oh Min worked with Villani navigators who were amazed by human willingness to explore unknown regions simply out of curiosity rather than conquest. But the most important change was in how the Villani treated each other. Children were no longer punished for showing affection. Scientists were encouraged to ask difficult questions. Artists created works that celebrated emotion and individuality instead of rigid conformity. "Look at this," Choibin said excitedly, showing Nira a message from Villani Prime. "There's a young girl there who painted a picture of different species holding hands together. A year ago, she would have been sent for offering for such contaminated thinking. Now her painting is being displayed in the capital." Nira smiled as she read the message. The girl's name was Kira, and she wanted to be an ambassador like Nira when she grew up. She wanted to visit other worlds and learn about different ways of living. The ripple effects continued to spread. Other species began reaching out to both, humans and Villani, curious about the civilization that had transformed itself so completely. Trade agreements led to cultural exchanges. Cultural exchanges led to friendships. Friendships led to a growing alliance of worlds based on mutual respect rather than fear. Standing on the bridge of their ship as it prepared to depart for another joint mission, Hyun reflected on how much had changed since that day he had found a dying girl in what he thought was a ceremonial platter. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked Nira. "Giving up your chance at a normal life to become an ambassador?" Nira looked out at the stars, where human and Villani ships now traveled together, exploring the galaxy side by side. "What is normal?" she asked with a gentle smile. Is it normal to hide your feelings? Is it normal to abandon those who need help? Is it normal to fear change? She turned to face her human friend, her eyes bright with purpose. Or is it normal to show kindness to strangers, to stand up for what is right, to believe that everyone deserves a chance at happiness? Hyun smiled back. When you put it that way, I think we're finally learning what normal really means. The universe was vast and full of wonders they had yet to discover. But they would face those wonders together, united by the simple truth that kindness knows no boundaries between the stars. One act of compassion had changed everything, proving that sometimes the smallest gesture can transform entire worlds. And somewhere in the depths of space, more offering vessels drifted in the darkness, waiting for someone to show them that they were not alone.